Get in, losers. We're watching It, Welcome to Derry. I guess we've watched it all. We've watched all of It, Welcome to Derry at this point. My name is Eric Vespe.
I'm Anthony Breznican.
And we are here to talk about that boy Pennywise and
That's right.
and all the shenanigans he's up to, not only in this episode, but in the entire first season. Now we put the first season to bed. This is crazy. It feels like we just started watching this, doesn't it? Well,
It does. It went fast.
Well, here, I'm going to amend that. It feels like, I know you've started watching this long time ago because you got some episodes early when you moderated that Comic-Con panel, right? So you've lived with this for a little bit longer, but from the moment that it's come out to now, it feels like we just started this show, watching it. Welcome to Derry. Feels like we just started this like a couple of weeks ago to me. That's what happens when you get old, folks. I don't recommend it. Time just goes by real quick.
Time flies, but it's sort of like the holidays, right? You hit Halloween, which is when this dropped, and suddenly it's Christmas.
Yeah.
Hence Christmas time. And that's life. That's how fast it goes. It's solid 8 episodes, though.
Yeah.
And man, this was, I think in the last, our last episode, I said the next one, I think you asked me to describe like what the last one is like. I don't want to give away anything, but now we can. I said it was big. Did you agree with that sentiment? Like it went, I feel like it just like, it ballooned, so to speak, in size and scale with everybody, the military, the kids, the kidnapped children, the parents trying to get involved, the losers trying to get the, this fragment of Pennywise's cage back and reinstalled by the Tim Burton tree.
The Sleepy Hollow tree is for sure a big character in this.
My wife was like, "Have we seen that tree before?" I'm like, "I think in like other movies, maybe."
It's no, you're exactly right, and I think it scratched an itch for us fans of the book because something that's never really truly been translated in any of the adaptations is that is the ending, the finale, whenever it is destroyed, what it does to Derry, right? And in the end of the book, it's a mass devastation of the town. Like the standpipe fucking breaks off and rolls down the hill, right? Like an earthquake hits and splits the street, and like it just when it is destroyed, so in large part is Derry. And for obvious reasons, that's Independence Day AAA blockbuster level of an ending. You normally
you
can't
really
afford.
You couldn't pull that off in 1990, and I think it was hard to pull off in even 20. What was Chapter 2? 2019.
19, yeah.
Because that's the one thing. I think he even said it on our show. Andy Muschietti said Stephen. He's talking to Stephen King about what he wants in the movie, and King was like, "I want that Paul Bunyan statue in there." And I'd love to see the standpipe roll down the hill and crush a bunch of people. Yeah. And I think King loves major destruction. Like his opening sequence to your favorite, Maximum Overdrive, is just, that's him like unleashing his inner sociopath. Like, I just want to destroy the world.
I want to throw watermelons at car windshields. God damn it! I'm gonna do it.
That sort of prankster apocalypse thing that he has going on inside. I say this every episode. I typically like King adaptations when they're more faithful. I don't mind variation and adaptation, but I like when the story follows what he's created because I like him as a storyteller. And in this case, these are all new stories, but I still feel like they really tapped into the vibe of what he wrote and what he created with it. All of this Bob Gray stuff that was hinted at in the book, but now gets sort of the bigger treatment. And I don't feel like they've spoiled it by explaining it. How do you feel about it, Eric? Sometimes in horror movies, the more something is explained, the less scary or less interesting it becomes.
Well, one of my favorite scenes in this episode, and probably of the whole season, is the trap that Dick Halloran sets for Pennywise here. And I like it because that's the mask coming off a little bit whenever... what does Pennywise, how do you trap this god, essentially? And that's what happens. And you see, kind of like Randall Flagg, how his bravado and all the scariness goes away whenever he's trapped in there as Bob Gray, right? And how I just love how he's how he reacts to that, where he gets pissed off at first, but then he gets slapped around by the carnival barker, right?
Yeah.
That Halloran's pretending to be, and he can't do anything about it because he is trapped in his own mind. But it gives you a really good look into the psyche of this being, of this entity. He thinks of himself as a god, or itself as a god, and just how confused it is, like, what is this? And how Halloran's, way to kind of trick him is to make him think that the powerful part of him is a dream and doesn't exist, and he's only ever been this sideshow performer, right? And it's working, and that's the crazy part about it. And so to your point, yeah, that deepens Pennywise in a way that like you can only get through like certain segments of the book, right? Where there's a few chapters in the book that are told from I think there's maybe only one actually chapter told from Pennywise's point of view, and this is that's a King specialty, and to be able to find a way to translate that into this season, I think, was very smart. There's a couple of again, I keep calling it TV bullshitty things that they've done throughout the season, and it's a little bit exacerbated in this episode because we have to get we have to get a little bit of the limitations set up here, because you couldn't just fully unleash Pennywise and then explain how they trap him again. Without going, oh, and by the way, we know exactly the final spot, where this can go, and he's gonna take his sweet time getting there, and the things that don't really add up, but the execution and the imagery is just so goddamn good. The whole Pied Piper aspect of Pennywise leading the floating children with his cage and blasting on that like a trombone and or the tuba or whatever the fuck he's playing there.
It was like a parade. It was like a parade, and I thought that was really effective. Yeah. What a great image of just those floating, sort of inert, limp bodies, upright, but drifting along 2 by 2 was a really good image. This is, you can see the previs in this episode, and this is a good thing. Sometimes that's a bad thing when you're like, some of the worst Marvel movies or DC movies where you go, okay, so the previs came first and then the story came second. This one I didn't quite feel that. Matter of fact, I think that because there's some like really metal imagery, the final shot of the kids trying to get that dagger in place to seal him in, and he's grown wings. Pennywise has grown wings so he can come get him, and he's turned into this bat creature because he needs to close the distance, and that is very like side of the very Meatloaf Bat Out of Hell album cover.
It's like the side of a van in the 80s, right? That imagery of the claws outreached and the kids are screaming and trying to get the dagger in place. But some of the TV bullshitty things, it's just like that I was talking about was you have that. It's like, okay, we're gonna just right now establish that. Oh, and by the way, this thing is gonna act like the fucking One Ring, just because we can't just tell. The kids know where to go at a certain point, and they go there with the dagger, and they're like, well, shit, why didn't they just plant it? So how about Rose goes, well, the thing actually doesn't want to be, the shard doesn't want to be too far from its home base, and this is the farthest part that it can go out, so it's gonna turn them against each other like Sam and Frodo, going to the end. Again, a little, maybe it's not, the reason why I call it TV bullshitty is I just think that it was something that wasn't very seeded. But again, like I was watching it going, that's kind of look at how cool that is, and look at Bill Skarsgård just fully unleashed. Like Pennywise is unleashed, and so is Bill Skarsgård in this moment, man. It is. You understand why, like, this doesn't work without him. If they had made this without Bill Skarsgård coming back, it wouldn't have been as effective. There's just something he brings, as that character that resonates and hits deeper than just a creation or a different version of the it entity. And I think it's because it's a real human that you kind of can connect to and project your shit onto, right?
It's true. It's almost the opposite of what Boris Karloff did with his monsters, which is Karloff brought such humanity to his creatures, and I mean this as a compliment to Bill Skarsgård. He vacuums the humanity out of his characters. Nosferatu, Pennywise. You look at a lot of the creatures he's performed, even when he did The Crow, that was not quite a monster, and there was more humanity to that character. But he's great at siphoning out the humanity and using his haunted eyes and expression and creating these voids within himself that I think it's a remarkable talent. There's a reason he keeps getting cast as these inhuman beings, because he's great at depicting it somehow. It's an unsettling thing,
right? But then you watch something like Barbarian, right, where he's
right.
And what I love about his casting there, and I'm a huge fan of casting against type, right, or using. I'll even rephrase that. I'm a huge fan of casting with known baggage. And the prime example of this is Once Upon a Time in the West casting Henry Fonda as the villain, right? And this is a guy that's like, casting Tom Hanks as the cold-blooded evil murderer, which they kind of do again in Road to Perdition, right? That's another good thing. But that's still more Tom Hanksy. You still, you get the father-son.
He's still the good guy. He's still the hero, right?
Yeah, he's still fighting the worst guys, so that's okay. But when they cast Bill Skarsgård in Barbarian, that character is meant to be somebody who you're distrustful of, and then you find out he's just as much a victim as everybody else, and but the whole first act of that movie hinges upon you not trusting this guy, and he brings so much warmth and charisma and charm to it, and you're like, and the more he does that, the more you're like, no, I don't trust this guy, and then you feel bad whenever he tries to help and gets offed, right? Sorry, spoilers for Barbarian, but that movie's been out for a few years now, so that's on
yeah, that's all right. You got to catch up, got to keep up, people.
Yeah, so but that shows that he has it in him, right? And I think you have to have a full understanding of humanity to that degree to be able to suck all that out for a performance, right? And I think he's I think he's more talented than he maybe gets credit for, and I can see him being on the fence about, I'm only going to be known as the clown if I keep doing this. But I also love that he's owning it. Like I remember reading Spielberg was asked about the Jaws sequels, and for the most part, when you ask Spielberg about the Jaws sequels, he's just like, he's flippant about it, or he makes jokes, or he'll little good humored jabs. He's a good political guy, so I don't think he'd ever go out of his way to super shit talk one of the sequels. But what he does,
he's no Quentin Tarantino emptying his clip into every innocent bystander actor that he could find.
I'm Hot Take Express Tarantino. That's what we're going to call him now. But
by the way,
I remember oh yes,
can we pause on this, because I mentioned that just as a joke, but it's relevant to Stephen King and It. He was on another podcast, Quentin Tarantino, and he was talking about how It rips off A Nightmare on Elm Street, and that King basically plagiarized Wes Craven. And I thought, okay, he was already writing It like in 81.
Yeah.
And then Nightmare on Elm Street came out like in 84. And that notion of the wisecracking trickster monster is not new. Like that's been everywhere. But that's a total perfect example of how Quentin Tarantino, I love him, a great filmmaker, absolutely makes some of my favorite films, often full of shit. Like he just doesn't know what he's talking about sometimes. Like, sorry, Quentin.
Well,
you don't know.
And he's also, he's just a true blue, dyed-in-the-wool movie nerd too, and with all the pluses and minuses that come with that, the pros and cons. And one of the cons is you get sucked. You have these, I don't know if it's a high opinion or just an opinion, but you have these like little clarity moments where you go, I feel like this, and then you just become immovable on that stuff.
Yeah.
I owe Quentin a lot of, to my own personal love of cinema. Through his work and through other stuff, because with Pulp Fiction, when Pulp Fiction came out, I was 13 years old. I was right at that perfect age where I was just like, I was ready for my movies to be more than Ghostbusters and Indiana Jones, right? Mm-hmm. Excuse me. And I remember going to the theater to see Pulp Fiction And I'll never forget this. It was a double feature where I went with a friend of the family who was kind of my movie buddy. It was a lady that worked with my stepdad, but we both loved movies, and so on the weekends we'd go watch movies. And she was super into the indie art house stuff, and so she introduced me to a lot of that. And then I was taking her to all the big, like, oh, we're gonna watch the latest, Independence Day kind of thing, right? And I really wanted to see Frankenstein, Kenneth Branagh's Frankenstein. I was so excited for it, and she wanted to go see this other movie I'd never heard of, and I'm just like, well, as long as we get to see Frankenstein. And so we went and watched Frankenstein first, and I fucking hated it. And I'm like, what the hell is this? It's trying to be kind of scary, but it also artsy, but it I don't know, it just didn't pick a tone for me. Like and I'm like, man, I was so bummed because she was like, okay, now we're gonna go watch the movie I want to watch, which I wasn't excited about. And I was like, who's in it? She's like, oh, John Travolta's in it. And I'm just like, the guy from Look Who's Talking? Like, why would I want to? Like, why do I give a shit about this? And that was Pulp Fiction, and I had that like rug pull, like movie cinema paradiso kind of experience where I can imagine the dramatic push in on like 13-year-old Vespe's face as the projectors lights in the background during that opening diner sequence with Honey Bunny and what's the I forgot the Tim Roth's character. So Amanda Plummer and Tim Roth, and where I was just like, I'd never seen a movie like this. The way the dialogue was, the way that it kind of pulled you right in, and the way that the story was told and broken up and all that, I'd never experienced anything like that. So then you have that, and then Tarantino, I happened to be lucky enough. He didn't move to Austin. I moved to Austin, and he did a bunch of screenings of like all these older movies, but I noticed there, so I discovered exploitation. I discovered 60s cinema, 50s cinema, the sex romps of the 50s, the Doris Day kind of stuff. And then we'd watch Godzilla movies. And so it was like going to film school, going to these QT fests. And I swear that there's a point here because I remember seeing those conversations after, like he would just come out and hang out with everybody and we'd bullshit about the movies that just came out or not came out, but that he just played. And I remember in one of those, he kind of stumbled upon his stance on Psycho, where he was like, Psycho sucks. Hitchcock, he was making his Alfred Hitchcock Presents, and so it looks like TV. It's not cinematic, and this is a guy who had done all these widescreen Technicolor things, and now he does this TV square black and white thing, and Tarantino's like now, so fuck Psycho. Psycho 2's the much better movie, and I've seen him repeat that, and I think what happens for a lot of us is we get stuck in these circles where we stumble upon a little stance and you get a reaction from it, and I think that sometimes that sticks. I don't know if the reason why I love Temple of Doom so much is that I had a huge amount of support when I was like, you know what, I love this movie, and now it's become kind of a thing for me. It's like my love of Jaws and Temple of Doom and Stephen King are kind of what I'll go to my grave with, right? So
well, sometimes the zeal to have an opinion becomes more important than the opinion itself, and you want to have a hot take. But to bring it back to Stephen King, it's right there in the book. Yeah. When he wrote it, he started it in September 9, 1981, completed on December 28th, 1985. I don't think he plagiarized The Nightmare on Elm Street, although Andy Muschietti has included little homages to A Nightmare, right? And as a little tip of the hat, I think tip of the hat of a fedora. What kind of hat does Freddy Krueger wear?
It's a burnt fedora. You got it. Yeah.
Yeah. And
him and Indiana Jones, the most famous. Indiana Jones and Humphrey Bogart, the most famous fedora wearers in cinema history.
And that concludes the first interlude of watching it, where we just pause and talk about Quentin Tarantino and Paul Dano and A Nightmare on Elm Street and Quentin's often misinformed
Matthew Lillard getting caught in the crossfire.
Yeah, a friend of our show, Matthew Lillard, also got caught up in that, which, I thought his comments were on point. Like, hey, this hurts. It sucks. Why are you taking shots at me? I'm not a, gigantic presence in this industry. And I think that's all fair. Yeah. I think, sometimes, look, we have to be careful of this too. We're on a show where we just give our opinions.
Right.
And I think sometimes you just got to think about whether just be reasoned.
Yeah.
Just have reasons for it. Saying Paul Dano sucks in There Will Be Blood, like, I think he's reacting to that character. Like, the character is a baby-faced, bizarre guy, or a pair of guys, but he is outmatched and outflanked by Daniel Plainview. So he's not the most formidable guy. If you get the most formidable guy against him, he's supposed to be underhanded and calculating and disarming with that, Paul Dano has that very unusually shaped kind of oval face. It's kind of lineless. There's a kind of eerie quality to him sometimes. He's a very nice guy, but he has a face that hides a lot of emotion, and that creates a bit of uncertainty. That's what makes him a great Riddler and a great creepy weirdo older brother in Little Miss Sunshine. So anyway, it concludes our Quentin Tarantino interlude. Back to Welcome to Derry.
Yes. The point I was getting to with the Spielberg thing, talking about the Jaws sequels, is that one of the things that he had mentioned that always sticks with me is that looking back, he regrets not doing Jaws 2. He's like, at the time, I couldn't have done it. It was too much of a traumatic experience making the first one, and it going radically over schedule, over budget, him being on the cusp of being fired throughout the whole production. Like, he went through some real, like, trial by fire making that movie, and he's like, I just couldn't go back out on the water again and do it. But later on, he said, I wish that I hadn't given up my authorship on Jaws, and that he wishes that if they did make a sequel, that he would have been involved, so it would have retained some sort of continuity beyond just Roy Scheider or the location or the shark or whatever. And so I'm really glad that Bill Skarsgård, however they did it, whether it's backing up the Brinks truck full of cash or, giving him inviting him on as a creative collaborator on it by making him an exec producer or whatever the case, I'm glad that Bill Skarsgård did this, because he gets to have that continuity with the character, and he gets to retain that chain of title, as it were, with Pennywise. And, but I can understand why he'd be little shy about doing that, because then you also don't want to turn yourself into Robert Englund, where you're just so tied to that one character that you can't be seen as anything else by the Hollywood at large. So,
but he has done other things. I mean, Nosferatu for one. He seems to enjoy transformation and hiding himself,
right?
And I guess if he had if this was all he was doing, maybe he would get a little burned out on it, but it's good to have a hit, too. I know musicians get sick of playing their number one, but it's also great to have.
Yeah, I agree. And before we dive into the rest of it, we are now 20-something minutes into this, and I need to give a shout-out to the Watching It Welcome to Derry sponsor, Black Magic Design.
Yes.
So these are the makers of the cameras and post-production tools behind some of the most cinematic horror you've ever seen, and one of the companies that helped create the It universe, as we've discussed in the past. The Blackmagic's DaVinci Resolve was used for post-production on both It and It Chapter 2, and other Fangoria Chainsaw Award winners and nominees like The Substance, Screamboat Willie, Longlegs, Final Destination Bloodlines, 28 Years Later, all that stuff. Hollywood-level power without the Hollywood price. Learn more at blackmagicdesign.com, and thank you guys for sponsoring this first season of Watching It as we follow along with the Welcome to Derry stuff. Yeah. All right. Okay, so let's jump into this. Let's start with we talked about the scale, and that's evident right at the top, right? This is where this episode opens up with there's a lot of Stephen King feeling shit in this episode, by the way, starting with these giant overhead, epic cinematic shots of the city of Derry being overtaken by a mist or a fog. Very mist coated, right? And that's representing Pennywise. It's like, hey, guess what? This place is mine now because you've removed my barrier. And you see that sweep through the town. You don't see Derry destroyed, but what you do see is like kind of what happens when it doesn't feel the need to hide anymore, right? And you see that on a scale that's super massive, right? And so like, and then one of the first things he does is he pulls a killer clowns from outer space and uses the principal as like a ventriloquist dummy.
Oh,
Super
I love that.
Shit, yeah.
That was very disturbing because you can't tell right away what's wrong with the guy, but something's off, and then he's manipulating his face. Remember those little rubber toys where you can put your fingers in and make the face move? Mm-hmm. But then he tears his head off and drop kicks it, and I I thought that was hilarious because it is terrifying. Like, and then the body gets thrown out onto the auditorium floor, right. And the kids all freak out. Like that's a very Simpsons Treehouse of Horror kind of like thing to do. But it also establishes that Pennywise, for all of his faults, including child mass murder, is funny. Like, he is very funny. Yeah. And he has a sense of humor, and I think the way Bill Skarsgård plays him, the way Tim Curry plays him, he's much more in line with that traditional view of the devil as a trickster and prankster, or not the Tom Hiddleston version from Marvel, but the Nordic mythological version of Loki as the trickster god, the god that like tempts you and fucks with you and really isn't gonna strike a fair bargain with you. There's always going to be a clause in the fine print that you didn't read. You know, the devil plays a game with you and challenges you, but he's always cheating. He's always ahead and just sort of having a great time. And so I love when King creates a villain. Leland Gaunt comes to mind too, from Needful Things, who's just loving the chaos, loving the mayhem. And Pennywise is just having a ball, having the time of his life. He's going to bust out of this cell. He's got big plans for the planet.
I like he's still got his sleep face on because he was resting that pool of blood. So he's got that like almost war paint like line. Yeah,
people have pointed out that it's the inverse of the Native American chief that has the sort of red paint from the nose and eyes up.
Interesting. The opposite side of the coin. Yeah,
right. I suspect there's something. I mean, I think that's deliberate, but also there's something about when you have a character who appears in multiple projects. I think filmmakers love to put a marker on it to designate this is the Millennium Falcon from the sequel film. So we're going to put a little square, a rectangular sonar dish up on top of it. We're going to give C-3PO a red arm just so it distinguishes him, and that's literally the reason they did those things. It's just to sort of.
The merchandise was a big part of that too, especially for the Star Wars stuff. Yeah.
Merchandise, it's branding. It's just okay. So if you see a picture of this is what it's from because it looks the same. You know, Harrison Ford looks different than he looks in the original trilogy, so you don't need to do that to him. He naturally has changed, but they like to just put a different costume on, put a different marker on, and I think that's kind of what's at play here. But the downside is it obscures his costume a little bit. It kind of makes it all blend together, and you don't get quite as much detail. But it is a creepy fucking look. It emphasizes the wild orange eyes that he has. So I thought that was great. Drop kicking the principal's head. We just met that principal, but I think that was a scream. Literally.
I do love that the first thing he does is like, okay, cool, I'm free now. I'm gonna go on a road trip. I need to pack some snacks.
Yes.
So I'm gonna go to the school, and I love the first thing you see is his like fingers doing the little walk up to the intercom, doot 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 beep.
Yep.
And then it's the principal's voice, but it's calling like all the underclassmen. All the upperclassmen can go home. It's like I want the younger kids, right?
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I didn't clock that.
Bring the kids. And he calls them all up there, and then you get the return of the Pennywise dance. You know, he sings a little song. And before he opens up his face and transfixes everybody,
he's a showman.
It's true, and that's the joy of the character. There's a reason why the horror icons that stand out are the Pennywises. They're the Art the Clowns. You know, not just the clown connection, but it's the performance, the Freddy Kruegers. even the later Jason movies, he was doing goofy shit. Look at Jason X, or like people, the Chucky movies. They all always lean into humor a little bit. Sometimes they go too far. When you look at like Freddy's Dead, and suddenly Freddy is literally doing "I'll get you, my pretty, and your little dog too" on the broom. There is a line there where it ceases to to be scary at all, but there's there is something about it. The stuff that sticks with you are always the humorous things. Even Billy the Puppet from Saw, there's like something funny about it it's so creepy at first, but there's something funny about this doll just going, would you want to play a game,
Yeah, I know. Well, I think there's something fundamental behind that, because when you have a character, a monster, a villain who's having a great time, it makes it more entertaining for the audience.
Right.
And I learned this from Mark Ruffalo when I was, I wrote a lot about the Marvel movies over the years. And I was talking to him on the set. I think it was like Age of Ultron or something. And we were talking about whether there would ever be a standalone Hulk movie again. And he said, the problem with the standalone Hulk movie, apart from there being like rights issues and things like that tied up with different studios, is the Hulk doesn't want to be there. And Bruce Banner doesn't want the Hulk to come out, and the Hulk doesn't like Bruce Banner. And so when that's your main character and he doesn't want to be in the movie, right. It's a bummer.
You're right.
When the whole point of the movie is, I need to stop doing the thing that you guys are all interested in, is that has a negative effect. So that was Mark Ruffalo's theory about why the Hulk and Bruce Banner is a great supporting character, but not a good lead. And I think that's really true, because if you look at these, other superhero characters or other heroic characters, let's say like Luke Skywalker, Spider-Man, they want to be there. They want to participate. They're desperate to get involved. And characters who are like, don't really want to, like, I gotta get rid of this thing in me. Like it's usually it just negates the drama. So Pennywise is like, it's not this like, I'm suffering, I'm in hell, I hate my existence, like, why was I born? It's like, fucking great. You open the cage, I'm loose, baby. It's Pennywise Rumspringa. I'm going to go nuts, and I'm taking the whole crew with me, and you can't stop me now, baby.
But so, there's also not a desperation, like, I think of like the end of Midnight Mass, where it's like it becomes quickly apparent what's happening for the vampires, and they're desperate. The main angel is desperate to get away, and like says, fuck all this stuff, fuck all my victims, fuck all that, I got to get out now. Right, and you'd think that would be Pennywise, where he's like, okay, before anybody traps me in here, traps and puts the lock back on the cage. I got to get the fuck out of here.
Like he's time. I'm picturing like Bill Murray at the end of Caddyshack after he blows up the golf course, and he just kind of like, like skulks out of frame. Like Pennywise is like, wait, you left the door open? Like, I'm just gonna get out of here. No, he is making a show of it. He's like, he's Charlestoning across that river. He has been waiting a long time for this. He's doing the Leonardo DiCaprio like happy walk from the meme. He's strutting his way across that frozen river, and he's feeling pretty invulnerable at that point.
Yeah, I mean, and that kind of leads so that all roads up to this point kind of led to the black spot. That's where all the characters and stuff converged, and poor Rich still died. It's so funny because when we talked about last episode and Rich's death, I was just like my bro got Titanic, and sorry little dude, you got Titanic. And now I'm seeing all this week on TikTok, everybody's like, no, you getting Titanic. He's like, you could totally fit in there. I'm like, I knew it. So I just want to say, ahead of the curve, we knew that. We
called
recognize that. But I love that he comes back, by the way. That is probably...
wasn't that sweet?
Here's the thing: is so you have all roads converge to the black spot up to episode 7, and now all roads are converging to what you call the Tim Burton tree, right? That's where the army is going. That's where the adults are going. It's where Pennywise is going. It's where the kids are going. And so everything's leading to that spot. And in order to kind of give that final area, then you get into that like little TV bullshitty thing I was talking about, where you have to have that scene where Rose pulls out her map and goes, "Oh, and by the way, luckily I've already drawn all the circles of where its influence can be," and also. Arbitrarily, this is the last spot, this is the finish line. He gets past this because it's not really a natural ending spot. I guess it kind of is the other bank of the Kenduskeag River. But, up until this point, it wasn't established like that that there were, those dedicated boundaries. We just knew that they'd buried all this thing. I feel like if they had established the tree in an earlier episode, maybe, then I would have felt a little bit less like they got to the end and were like, oh shit, I got to figure out how to, make it make sense that Pennywise just didn't instantly get out, and why they didn't just instantly put this shard fragment, in there to lock the cage. But like I said at the beginning of this episode, as we were talking about it, I registered that and go, that's a little bit of sloppy writing, I think, but I think it's so effective, man. The visuals are so effective. The performances are so effective. I'm so invested in these kids at this point. And especially when you get like the reveal of, everything's all screwed. The Pennywise is going to win and it doesn't really matter. And then you get that, the shaman, lady, the chieftain, the warrior, the ghost shows up, to Dick and reveals Rich is there to help his friends because they need one more set of hands to drive that thing home, right?
I'm going to push back on the bad writing thing. You have to have destinations and goals. Mm-hmm. And in my mind, okay, if you open a cage and it's a big cage, mm-hmm. there's one way out. And I think what the writing is telling us is, okay, he's got to go out this way. He's got to go out this path. This is the furthest point where we can still have these shards connect. They're kind of like cell phone towers, right? Like where they're emanating a certain radius. They're not all linked together by a chain or something. Like it's not a circular thing. They're just sort of planted at intervals. We all understand that notion that you space things out and then they sort of reach out and connect to each other and create this barrier. And that this is about as far as we can get. This is like drop dead. And I think that's true. Like that's what you would have with that case. So now the cage is like, it's sort of shaped like it has a little point on it, right? Like
I understand why you need it for the drama. I just don't think the fact that they introduced that concept so late, it just makes it feel like they painted themselves into a corner for me.
Maybe. I guess they need to say like, why is he going out this way and what's the furthest point? But and also, I guess I got over it pretty fast.
Yeah, when they plant it too, you also get that big like effects moment where all the beams, very Dark Tower-ish, I guess, where everything connects again. The cage is reset, but you see like little circular cages within it. And I'm like little circular lines that I'm like, oh, I guess those just weren't active as long as all the things weren't buried. It's like, was he repulsed from the other ones too, and he could only go out that way? Like they never really established that. There's a lot of people that do the you know what? I think this needs to happen because of plot reasons versus it.
But I think the rest of the circle was intact, so he had to go out through the place where there was the opening. Where they dug up the turtle shell and took that thing out. Like that's his only route away.
And that was near. I guess it wasn't near the tree because the tree. The whole point of establishing that the shards want to stick close to the landing site or whatever is that the reason why it got so tough is the further it got away. This is the furthest point. So this is literally. It's not honestly that they couldn't have reconnected it down the line, but this maybe is the last spot where humans can actually carry this.
Yeah, I think the addition of the force pushing it away was maybe that was a little extraneous. Like you don't. I think that was just so you could have Rich come in and you need all of them to force it down.
Which is a moment that's worth the bullshit, I think. But yeah.
My question was, as a Pittsburgh guy who grew up along riverbanks, okay, you're sticking this rock in the by the roots of this tree along the riverbank. What happens when that river slightly floods? What happens to that stone? Like, are we now pouring some concrete here to establish that?
Yeah, that seems a
so
little
there are all
precarious.
there are all sorts of engineering questions, and you could pick things apart. But I don't know. I found myself rolling with it.
Well, I love. Here's what what I will give them is that you do, when you're doing a TV series versus a movie or even a single book, you do need to give a reason why this thing always sticks in Derry, right? If it has complete freedom to, it's too powerful to not be locked into a location, right? And, you need to give it a reason why it just sticks there other than, well, it's always been there, which is kind of what the default is. That's where it crash landed in the book. That's where it's always just kind of stuck around there. So having to reverse engineer that, is obviously a challenge. It's going to be difficult. And as much as I'm being critical of it, I don't think that it's necessarily a bad thing that they had to address. There's just a few things in here that I wish that had been seeded a little bit more throughout the series versus just introduced at the end. But yeah, anyway, that's all I wanted to say on that.
Can we talk about Dick Halloran, Chris Chalk, and the little box, the little trickery he pulls on Pennywise himself? You already mentioned that he Pennywise is ready to lash out. Who's he grabbing? Is he eating Marge?
Yes, yeah, he's going after Marge, and that would have apparently saved him in the future. But we'll talk about that, and that's another interesting. Big
that would have unlocked his other cage, which is that he dies in the 2019 version. But he freezes. His jaws are wide open. He's got the many teeth. Must have an excellent dentist in the Macroverse, just keeping all those little teeth bright and white and sharp. He freezes, and we see he is imagining himself as Bob Gray, waking up from a drunken stupor, getting shoved around by his boss, the carnival barker. And I think the most genius thing that King did with the original book is this notion of Pennywise must follow the rules of whatever shape he takes.
Yeah,
he's not all powerful. He can create. He's sort of like a genie in a lot of ways, right? He can take all these different shapes. He can make all these things appear to be true, but he has to follow the rules of what he creates.
Right.
And what I love here is he gets caught in his own identity as the clown.
Yeah.
Like, you want to be the clown? All right, you're the clown.
Yeah.
You're the real clown. You're the guy who plays the clown. And Pennywise, I think that's why I like this part, because it's not like Dick Halloran does something way over the top that gets inside. Like, he doesn't surround Pennywise's consciousness. He just gives him a shove in one direction, which is, yes, that's right, you're the clown. And Pennywise suddenly just teeters off balance, right? And not permanently. He figures it out, but he is destabilized. And I think he is really, that's a great moment of performance from Bill Skarsgård when he's in the dream and is like, wait, what the fuck? Like, I love the little questions he gets when Periwinkle, Ingrid Kersh, played by Madeline Stowe, approaches him and thinks it's her actual daddy, and he's just sort of like, "Wait, what? Oh, wait, okay, well, fine, I'll use this." Those moments of calculation are great. And as he figures this out and slowly gets unfrozen, I thought that was really a wonderful moment. So, what would you dig about it?
No, I mean, it was all that. It's the fact that you get to see, the mask off entity a little bit. You get to see the insecurity that this being can have. He thinks of itself as a god and all powerful and all this, and then he gets humbled right away, and he's like, it's so confused. And I do love that when. Of course, the army has to fuck all that up by jostling Halloran, and then that jostles the illusion that he trapped Pennywise in. But the second that it starts putting it together, and he goes, tricky Dicky, and he like realizes who it is, and like unmasks him or whatever, and then he takes his stuff back. It's not just the glimpses we get inside of its mind, it's how it reacts when it comes out, right? Because you have Shaw the general had seen it frozen on the top, and he goes and looks at it and goes, oh my god, it's like, even after all this time you realize the general wasn't 100% sure this wasn't some kind of fairy tale, there's something, a nightmare that he says, as a child's nightmare or whatever. And I love, he's there when it comes out of the stupor that Halloran puts it in. And it's the way that Skarsgård plays it, where it's like, he's like shakes his head, like, whoa, I was like, oh my God, what was that? I don't know. There's just something that, that this thing that's lived amongst humans for so long, I love that it's picking up human traits. Like, I don't think that this, would have, and maybe that's what you were talking about, living within the rules of the construct that it makes it. It can't help but become a little human itself, which ends up being the downfall of it, whenever, the grown-up losers bully it to death or whatever the fuck they do. But yeah, I just love how all that, that plays together. That's some of my favorite stuff. It's that and like anything to do with Halloran in the season has been some of my favorite things, to the point where, like, I wouldn't mind if they said, you know what, we are doing Welcome to Derry, season 2. We're also going to do the Dick Halloran show, and we're going to have Chris Chalk go on this new job as a cook at some fancy London hotel, and see what he's up to there. And then, you can have multiple seasons of Chris Chalk playing Halloran, as far as I'm concerned, and it can end with him walking into the Overlook or whatever,
That was a bit on the nose, but I did love, like, hey, nothing scary about a hotel, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like, he may as well have, like, turned to the camera and said that, like, wink. Ding. Yeah.
I mean, but it's good that it wasn't just like, because I was expecting them to go, hey, and I just got this job offer in Colorado. I like that he doesn't go right from Derry to The Shining that we know. He's going to some place in London, right? He's going to a
I was wondering if that wasn't already embedded in the character from the books. Like, doesn't he mention something like where he's traveled and things he's done?
Probably, yeah.
Like that he's been around the world doing working as a chef. But I think if you watch this episode again, keep in mind that when Chris Chalk is performing Halloran, like he's really pushing The Shining and like using this power to envelop Pennywise. He's laying down as he does it. And his head is like it's like he's opened the front face camera while he's looking down, and his chin is pressed down into his throat. And that is the pose that Scatman Crothers has in his hotel room when he's using The Shining to reach out all the way from Florida to Colorado.
Yeah,
I thought that was a cool sort of homage to the Scatman Crothers performance. Like, really, like, just sort of deflated, as his brain is working overtime. But I loved all that.
I also got to point out that it's great work at the beginning of the episode too, when he's, the thing that Pennywise does to inflict the most damage to Halloran is to unlock those boxes and to have the shine, turn the shine up to 11 essentially. And now you have, he's just completely haunted, and you get that little Jack Torrance thing where he's trying to drink himself away from this, what Danny Torrance would do in Dr. Sleep. He tried to drink the voices quiet, and it's not working. And, and to the point where he's almost, ready to put a gun in his mouth. Not almost, he is ready. He does put a gun in his mouth, and the only thing that pulls him out of it is it's Leroy not asking him for help, but begging him for help.
Yeah.
Right. And if the way that those two play, that's such a great scene. And the way that they play it, where it takes Giovanna Depo, humbling himself to a point that he hasn't been able to do with this character, and to not only ask, but like beg and say, help me save my baby. It's not help me save my son. It's my baby. Like, for whatever reason, that's what punches through the torment that Halloran's going through. And all that stuff to me is so strong, and and Chris Chalk is just so fucking good in this role. I think even I've seen people who love to be negative about everything. They'll be like blah blah this, and then they go, yeah, but Chris Chalk's pretty good in this. I'll admit that.
He's very good.
Except for Tarantino, he hates him in this role.
Let's talk about Marge and her confrontation. And this is a major part of Pennywise lore. She is revealed to I don't. Do they say her last name in the show?
I'm sure they must, but it
calls her Margie Tozier, and she's like, "What is that?" And that name immediately for fans of it, they're thinking of Richie Tozier, Beep Beep Richie, the funny, the class clown of the Losers, played by Bill Hader in the Andy Muschietti movies, and played by Harry Anderson in the 1990 version. Harry Anderson, I loved seeing him in that, by the way, like Harry Stone from Night Court in a Stephen King story. That was great casting. He was really fun in that. And, Richie is one of my favorite Losers. He's just so interesting. And the whole Beep Beep Richie thing is a fun way of contrasting with the clown, or I guess matching with the clown of Pennywise. And so she's Richie's mom. But the cool thing here is that Pennywise knows about Richie. Mm-hmm. He exists out of time and space. He's kind of like Kurt Vonnegut's Tralfamadorian aliens who can see the entirety of their existence. They know how they're going to die. They know when they're born. They're sort of it's sort of like existing all at once.
The arty version of that is the Arrival aliens, if you've seen Arrival.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And it's this notion that our sense of time and space is linear, but that's not how it is for every being in the universe. And so Pennywise is aware of his end, but he can't really change it. But maybe he can go backwards. And I think that establishes the arc of this whole series, is we're going back from the present day to the 80s, then to the 1960 cycle. Now we're going to go back to 1938. Then we're going to go to 1908. And moving backwards, I think Pennywise's goal in Welcome to Derry is, can I undo the events of my own end? Yeah. I think he's going to keep trying to find... I think that what this tells us is there will continue to be connections between the Losers and the of the original Stephen King story and the characters we meet in 38 and 1908.
Right. I mean, for sure. And I think I'm not 100% sure how much I like turning Pennywise into the Terminator and in doing that. But I do find it fascinating because it does lean into the established mythology, as you said. Like that's what's always been interesting to me about Pennywise. And this is expanded upon a little bit in the Dark Tower series where, there are these things that that exist outside of time. And I think it is fascinating for it. And the reason why it can be so gleeful and delightful and confused and weird is because it is simultaneously living all these things, and pulling from different things. And so a little weird thing that he might say here might be because he's kind of maybe busy in another timeline, right? There's something that makes that character even more off. That's really cool about it. Giving him an ultimate goal of, I got to kill fucking Stuttering Bill's grandpa, in the 1930s. I don't know. Because right now I think, Bill's the only one that isn't represented from the Losers, right? Because you had, obviously Mike Hanlon is directly tied to characters in this one. I guess
Stan Uris.
Yeah, and Bev Marsh by the end of this, is tied in a little bit. But yeah, Stan's in there, Richie now, and I like that he even pulls out. He's like, "Oh yeah, by the way, this is your son. Check it out." And then he pulls out the wanted poster from the movie. Yeah. Or not the wanted, poster. Yeah.
Eddie Kasprak. He's the loser who has all the hypochondria and ailments.
Breaks his arm. So. Yeah. Yeah. So Eddie isn't represented, and neither is Stuttering Bill. So I wonder if that means in season 2 we're gonna get. Stuttering Bill's
and Bev Marsh only turns up at the end, so I think that's suggesting maybe she'll be a part of season 2, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it opens the door to be able to jump around in time too, and you got a taste of that this season, jumping between 1908, 1935, and then 1962, right? So I think that opens the door really to jumping, around these time periods we've already established. So there's nothing saying we're not going to get these kids, the kids that we've seen back in some form, for this season, or the 80s kids or whatever, and have some crazy de-aging shit that has to go on. I can imagine they pick the one person to do the cameo where they wouldn't have to spend a huge amount of money to, because all the boys are, they completely radically changed when they grew up. But Bev, she looks pretty similar. So I think that Sophia
also,
Lillis,
Lily says to Marge, I believe, like, what if this thing is going back, and what if it keeps trying to undo its own end?
Right.
And she says, I think a very wise thing. It's like, well, that's somebody else's fight.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's important to know when it's not your fight anymore, when you've done your part.
You can worry about it, but there's nothing you can do about it unless you somehow, drink a magic indigenous potion that lets you also jump through time, which maybe they'll do. I don't know, but
maybe they'll do.
But I'm sure that I have a feeling we're gonna see some of these characters again that we met this season. I'd put money that we're going to see them, but I will say that, it is asleep at this point, so anything that we see further past this point is not going to make a whole lot of sense unless they can write some sense into it. Maybe, we do have to get some sort of protection on that piece, more than, Leroy and his family sticking around on the farm, maybe, there could be something that spans time. I think that giving your main bad guy, the ability to recognize different timelines opens up, pretty much any possibility you want. So
now let's talk about the coda of this episode. So, you get Lily and Marge saying it's going to be somebody else's fight. And then it's just kind of like, okay, that's basically the end of this season. And then you get Mrs. Kersh. You get sort of like a post-credit scene, right, with Mrs. Kersh. Yeah. Elderly Mrs. Kersh waking up and,
she's doing watercolors.
Yeah. She's doing watercolors. She's painting a clown. A clown's hand and a little girl's hand, and which looks like a very old lady kind of thing to paint unless you actually know what she's doing. Yeah. It's I thought a pretty cool thing to bring Sophia Lillis back as Bev. She's grieving her mother's suicide in Juniper Hill. Yeah. Tell me your impression of this scene.
I like it a lot because that was one of the questions I had was like, so is Mrs. Kersh like, is there a piece of the real Mrs. Kersh there, when we see her in it, chapter 2, right? But I think what this answers is like, no, this is Pennywise using something from Bev's memory. Yeah. And that Bev wouldn't automatically remember the crazy old lady that walks in the door and says, nobody in Derry ever really dies. As an adult, how many times have you run into something that triggered a childhood memory that you didn't remember you had? So, Pennywise, the fact that it's buried somewhere deep in her memory, running into Mrs. Kersh, and then she pops up again in chapter 2, then it's a little bit of an aha thing. It's fan service that makes sense and pays off. Right, it gives you a little bit of like, so that's why Mrs. Kersh appeared to adult Bev.
Yeah,
because
Andy was. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's it. I was done.
But Andy cast Joan Gregson, who played Mrs. Kersh in It Chapter 2 as the old lady. He brings her back, which I think is really fun. Now, she looks a little bit older, right? It's been 6 years. Yeah. But this is the real flesh and blood Mrs. Kersh, the Madeline Stowe character, the little periwinkle that we saw in 1908. Mm-hmm. This is her in the 80s. She's clearly an elderly lady at the end of her life, or near the end of her life. And she looks essentially the same as when Bev imagines her 27 years later. So I think that answers definitively that Mrs. Kersh is not alive, is not the same lady. I've seen a lot of people online being like, well, wait, how could she be alive then? She's not. This is a manifestation of it. Mm-hmm. And I'm with you. He's pulling something from her memory, this interesting chance encounter in a emotional, volatile, vulnerable moment for Bev. And I think this is all set up. That whole coda is just to connect to It Chapter 2. I don't know that it's setting anything up for the next installment, the next series of Welcome to Derry.
Yeah, I don't think so either. But it's it's fan service done right. Obviously that's up to personal opinion and personal taste. But for me, a lot of times the fan servicey things can get a little eye rolly. But I love it when it makes sense, because it clicks into place like a good puzzle piece, like that final missing puzzle piece where you're like, and so the whole Mrs. Kersh sequence now in the book and in all the adaptations makes a little bit more sense, especially in It Chapter 2, where they lay into my father, Bob Gray, all that stuff. And it gives Pennywise, also a chance. He's like, ooh, this is fun, because this is my favorite form anyway. So I get to play around with this and torment Bev Marsh a bit about it. So
yeah. Can I shout out a little plug for myself?
Sure,
I did an interview with Andy Muschietti about the Bob Gray thing, about explaining who Bob Gray is, and that scene from Steve's book where Mrs. Kersh appears to Bev Marsh, and she says some things about working in a hospital. So even that is a direct tie back to King's book. And I think that's why this show works so well. So you could read that at Esquire, like Andy Muschietti explaining this part of the adaptation, the Bob Gray, the Mrs. Kersh of it all. I think this is why the show works, because it never strays far. It's like that shard. It can't stray too far from where Stephen King originally planted it. And, when things go very far afield from his original storytelling, it's fine. Maybe it's good. I don't know. I can't think of one that I really loved that way. But I think it works so much better when it just stays faithful to the source material. There's a reason he's such a popular storyteller. If you're going to adapt his stuff, better stay close to home.
Right. I have a question for you. Do you think that by expanding this mythology and connecting it so directly to the characters that we know from the movies, the Losers Club that ultimately ends up killing it, do you think that opens up some plot holes? Like, do you now want to go like, what was Marge doing while Richie was off fighting the clown? And by the way, there's some hints leading up to this that she's Richie's mom too, because she says early in this episode, "Let's go kill that fucking clown." So she does the same thing that her son would say a little bit later. But do you think that means like, why is Leroy, just off, punching holes in the goats' heads or whatever the entire time of, that
is that what he's doing?
Well, that's what he's working the farm, right? And the first time you meet Leroy in It Chapter 1, he's teaching Mike how to euthanize the thing.
It does raise a question of why don't these adults, when they know the next cycle is coming up, say something to their own children? Yeah. Or get out. Yeah. And I do wonder about that. Now, you can call it is a plot hole, but maybe it's just a hurdle. Like, it's a question to resolve, right? What's the solution?
Well, it opens up the possibility of a plot hole. I'm with you. I won't call it a plot hole yet, just because we know that there's more seasons coming, and for all we know, things are addressed in that. But even if they never circle around to it, it does make me wonder. Like, now I want to see like who was Marge? What was Marge doing during the next cycle? Like, was she around?
I'm curious.
I mean, we never meet anybody else's parents except for Bill's, Eddie's
and hypochondriac mom
and Bev's, right?
Right.
So,
and Mike talks about his dad because he interviews him for the Black Spot interview.
So maybe it's just Richie, who we never really see his home life, right? So it's. Yeah. Because even Stan, like, his father's the rabbi, right, and he's reading the, he's getting ready for his bar mitzvah and doing that stuff. So yeah, is that right? Is Richie the only loser? We don't see Ben's home life in the book. We do, like, we know a little bit more about his father dying and all that stuff, but don't see Ben or Richie really. Their folks.
But I am curious. That's a good question. So maybe we'll find out something.
Yeah, I don't know. What's Marge up to? I demand justice for Marge. Marge went from like, oh, they're doing this with this character, thing for me, going, whatever, at the beginning, to like one of my favorite characters. So I love that she went from kind of on the precipice of being a shitty person to being the one-eyed warrior, and going after the clown, and being a true blue member of this version of the Losers Club.
And I like that her friend Rich, lives on, at least in tribute, with the name Richie. It gets very sweet. It gets very true. People, we named our kids after people who are gone, and that's a way you carry the legacy.
Yeah, I told you Adolf was probably a bad name, though.
But Marge naming her own son Richie, I think that's really powerful. And also, the most interesting thing about Rich's death in Welcome to Derry is he isn't killed by Pennywise. He's killed in the black spot fire.
Yeah.
But Pennywise doesn't get a bite out of him.
No,
Pennywise
so he doesn't
live
within him. Yeah.
And what I like about that is because Richie did something brave and selfless. And he did it. Yes, he is Jack in Titanic balancing the door for Rose in a way. You can make that point. That's fine. But he self-sacrifices and he chooses to do it. He's not afraid. And Pennywise wants your fear. And so he doesn't get that out of Rich. And so Rich is free of Pennywise. I like that.
Well, and I like that he's kind of summoned. He doesn't feel like one of the Dick Halloran's wandering ghosts either, right? He's not bloated. He's not it doesn't feel like he's a lost soul wandering the earth. It feels like he was called and led to this fight by the warrior chieftain, right?
Very guardian angel as opposed to
for sure
lost soul.
And I love that Pennywise can see him. And when he's running, Pennywise is kind of like he's on the ice, and he's like, his head keeps getting blown off, and and that's another thing I love, by the way, the little Jack in the Box head that pops up.
That was great.
But I love that there's that moment, that slow motion running where Rich is running to his friends, and he flips off Pennywise on the way over. It's a little.
Oh yeah, it was funny.
It's a little bit. This is the end kind of humor, but I think it fits within the thing.
What a kid would do, right?
It's what a kid would do, and to your point, this wouldn't have been able to be possible if Pennywise had actually gotten him, because then it feels like that's the kind of the darker evil of Pennywise, is that if he gets you, you're never going to be at peace. You're always going to be kind of part of this monster, which then leads me to go, God damn, there's a poor Georgie, any of these folks that Pennywise actively consumed.
It is sort of like the devil getting your soul, right?
Yeah. So there's something even darker. And, it's funny is this is such a light Spielberg-esque, moment of, the true blue friendship. Could be like an Amazing Stories punchline, right? And it has been.
Right.
There is an Amazing Stories episode where a battalion of soldiers, gets pinned down, and somebody who died on D-Day gets one part of their group who died landing on the beach, and they didn't know it, comes in to save the day. So it has happened, but then it leads to a way darker thought of like, if that's true, and Pennywise is does consume, and he says that Bob Gray's in here with everything, it gets a little exorcisty, right? It gets a little creepy of like beyond just killing these things. He's these people. He's taking their essence, their being, and they can't live on in whatever whatever afterlife exists in the Stephen King universe, right?
Good to have that foreboding. I can't wait for Welcome to Derry season 2. I'm ready for 1938, man.
This is it's going to be interesting, because I was wondering how they were going to kind of sustain, especially after they've kind of already told us like everything that happens in this season. Like, what are they going to do with is the Bradley gang going to be able to sustain the entire thing? It's like, obviously not. There's going to be a whole many bunch more wrinkles. I think I had a stroke, but there's going to be a lot of fertile playground, I think, with this, especially if you're toying a little bit more with Pennywise, kind of remembering that these little bits and pieces, and that he is has experienced multiple times. And to put a pin in that, I want to point out something he says that's very, very, very interesting to anybody hoping that maybe this could be a franchise that lives on beyond this. Is Pennywise, talks about his death also potentially being his birth, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, is it my death or is it my birth?
And he does become like a little baby.
He does. So, maybe this is a being that can't conventionally ever be killed. If it's somebody that lives out of time, period, his death can be his birth. There could be, essentially, I think it opens the door for potential for sequels as well, if they ever went that way.
As he says, yesterday, tomorrow, it's all the same to little Pennywise.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's a good place to wrap it up. That was Welcome to Derry.
Yeah, thanks for joining me on this journey, Mr. Breznican. And
my
thanks
pleasure.
to everybody for listening along or watching along. And hopefully we'll be back for season 2.
So long.
Goodbye, everybody.